Zane left the room, but the Duke remained, eyeing Belle with a mixture of curiosity and sternness. "I understand you," the Duke began, his voice steady and authoritative. "It takes bravery to express your opinion, especially knowing the consequences." Belle lowered his head, a pang of guilt flashing across his features. "I ask for your forgiveness," he murmured. The Duke shook his head slightly. "Do not apologize. For a member of the Catastrophe family, this is commendable." He paused, his gaze intensifying. "Now, I want to see your strength. Show me your divine weapon." Belle nodded, bowing his head in acquiescence. He extended his hands forward, and blue sparks crackled between them. The Duke's eyes widened with a hint of worry as he watched. A sheath materialized in Belle's hands, glowing with an ethereal light. "This is my divine weapon, Avalon," Belle announced. The Duke's eyes widened further, astonishment evident on his face. "Is it possible? The legendary divine weapon containing the spirit of the first paladin?" He folded his arms, recalling the stories he had heard about this mythical weapon, passed down through generations of the greatest heroes. "Zane mentioned you used both a sword and a gun," the Duke said, his tone a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. Belle confirmed with a nod. "Yes, both are within this sheath." He lifted the sheath slightly, and with a bright blue flash, a sword and a pistol appeared in the air. The Duke's eyes widened in disbelief. Did he just summon a divine weapon from its sheath? "What is this?" Belle continued, "I can wield 2 weapons simultaneously, but there are 3 more types." This revelation left the Duke utterly astonished. He stared at Belle, realizing that his son had the potential to be a future hero. The Duke's expression hardened with resolve. "I have no interest in weaklings," he declared. "I expect a lot from you, work hard." Belle's eyes widened in surprise at his father's words. The Duke turned and left the room, the door slamming shut behind him. Belle collapsed onto the floor beside the bed, letting out a sigh of relief. His aura was so oppressive, he thought, but now he expects so much from me. Determination filled his eyes as he clenched his fist. "I must show my strength, even though I am still a child. I need to attain a higher rank and defeat as many monsters as possible to increase my mana." With newfound resolve, Belle decided to start by hunting orcs in the forest. Night fell, casting a dark shroud over the forest. In the middle of a clearing, the severed head of an orc lay, blood seeping from its wounds. The sound of claws scraping against the ground echoed through the trees as beasts approached the grisly scene, blood splashing beneath their feet. A large wolf walked past the corpses, its snow-white fur on its paws and belly stained with blood. The animal bared its teeth, revealing sharp fangs coated in crimson. Suddenly, the wolf turned sharply, growling loudly as its fur glowed under the light of the moon. The next morning, Belle ventured into the forest, the familiar surroundings evoking memories. He murmured to himself, "This forest brings back memories. After I was kicked out of my home in my previous life, I trained here for a while." He continued deeper into the woods, a sense of unease creeping over him. "Strange," he muttered, "I've gone to the very depths, where all the monsters dwell." Unbeknownst to him, red eyes watched from the bushes. He trudged on, puzzled that he hadn't encountered a single orc. Suddenly, Belle froze in place. Blood and severed limbs of monsters littered the ground ahead. A chill ran down his spine as he realized something was terribly wrong. Fear gripped him just as the sound of 4-legged footsteps and heavy breathing approached from behind. Belle spun around, drawing his sword in the nick of time to block an attack. The huge wolf jumped to the side, the force of the impact knocking Belle to the ground. Belle looked up, his heart pounding. "What is this?" he exclaimed. A massive wolf emerged, its red eyes gleaming ominously. Belle's mind raced. "It's Fenrir," he thought, recognizing the rare and formidable creature. Now he understood why he hadn't encountered any monsters. This beast had driven them away. He had hoped to hunt orcs, not face a D-rank monster. His mana reserves were nearly depleted. At best, his strength was equivalent to an E rank. Running seemed the most appealing option, but he knew turning his back on Fenrir would mean instant death. As Belle's thoughts raced, Fenrir watched him intently. The wolf's pupils suddenly narrowed, and Belle braced himself. He's going to attack, he realized. Fenrir lunged towards him with incredible speed, and Belle could barely react in time. Belle summoned his Ragnarok pistol, but Fenrir moved too swiftly, evading the bullets with ease. "Damn it!" Belle cursed, frustrated as his attack failed. Realizing that his bullets were too slow due to his depleted mana, he quickly decided to switch tactics. A sword materialized in his hand, and he thought, if the gun didn't work, then maybe this will. Without hesitation, Belle charged forward, meeting Fenrir's aggressive advance. As the beast lunged, swinging its massive paw, Belle narrowly dodged by sidestepping. Seizing the opportunity, he aimed a swift strike at Fenrir's side. However, The wolf retreated with remarkable agility and turned to face him again. Bell was taken aback by the creature's nimble maneuver. They stood in a tense standoff, and Bell's worry grew. In the past, I could have easily killed him, he thought. Fenrir charged again, baring its teeth and swinging its paw. Bell braced himself, thinking, I can't keep up with this speed. He managed to block the attack, mitigating the main damage but still receiving a deep cut on his leg from the Fenrir's claws. Gritting his teeth against the pain, Bell noticed the Fenrir beginning to circle him, preparing for another series of assaults. As the Fenrir delivered a barrage of strikes, Bell struggled to parry and reflect each blow. This is bad, he thought, feeling the weight of the battle bearing down on him. Fenrir attacked once more, and this time, Bell failed to parry the blow. He looked up just in time to see the Fenrir's massive jaws snapping dangerously close to his face. Panic surged through Bell. I just reincarnated, I can't die here. With a desperate thought, he summoned the Achilles shield and thrust it forward. To his shock, the wolf leaped over the shield, and Bell's eyes tracked its movement. Before he could react, Fenrir struck from behind, sending Bell sprawling to the ground. Bell's shield and sword clattered to the ground beside him. Gasping for breath, he thought, if this keeps up, I'm going to die. Pain coursed through his body from the numerous wounds, and he struggled to gather the strength to continue the fight. Fenrir loomed over him, a menacing shadow against the dim forest light, ready to deliver the final blow. Bell was certain he couldn't rely on brute strength alone, only one weapon remained. Clutching his sore shoulder, he muttered to himself, I have no choice. I'll have to use it. Sensing the rising threat, Fenrir immediately lunged, accelerating sharply and growling ferociously. Bell stood his ground, closing his eyes. As Fenrir swung its massive paw, Bell opened his eyes and called upon Aegis. The wolf's attack dispersed the purple haze that materialized around Bell's hand. Fenrir paused, staring intently at Bell, whose hand now bore a glove exuding a dark purple mist. I really didn't want to use this, Bell admitted, but in this situation, I have no other choice. Fenrir took a step forward, then accelerated again, closing the distance with alarming speed. But Bell was prepared. As the wolf lunged, jaws open wide, Bell swiftly dodged and leaped onto Fenrir's back. Apologizing to the beast, he readied his hammer, swung it over his shoulder, and struck Fenrir square in the face. The impact sent Fenrir reeling, a loud growl escaping its mouth as it sprayed saliva. Bell quickly dismounted, landing on the ground with agility. His weapon, the Aegis, was no ordinary glove, it was the glove of darkness, capable of instantly enhancing physical abilities and initiating a process of destruction. As this thought crossed Bell's mind, the glove began to glow red, his eyes mirroring the same hue. Fenrir, now enraged, launched another attack, growling louder than before. Bell felt the reinforcement from the glove growing stronger with each passing second. Facing the charging beast, Bell stood firm and declared, "Say goodbye to your life." He clenched his fist, feeling the immense power surging through him. As Bell struck the Fenrir repeatedly, a wide smile spread across his face. Time passed, and eventually, the wolf succumbed to its injuries, collapsing to the ground lifeless. Bell sighed in relief as he looked at Fenrir's motionless body. "Thank God I dealt with him quickly," he muttered. The glove on his hand disappeared, and Bell pondered the nature of the dark divine weapon. Its special abilities came at a cost. The longer he fought, the more it pulled him into the abyss of darkness. He sat down next to Fenrir's muzzle, contemplating the beast's presence. Where did Fenrir come from? He wasn't here before, Bell mused. No matter. There's no point in worrying about it now. His thoughts were interrupted when the hammer he had placed on the ground suddenly sparkled. A realization dawned on him. By defeating Fenrir, he could now harness the beast's attributes. Hunting strong monsters is more effective than hunting entire hordes of weak ones, he thought, eagerly anticipating his new powers. Some time later, not far from the estate, Sarah sat in the shade of tall trees, humming a melody. She happily held up a flower crown she had just finished crafting. Laughing, she wondered if her brother would like it. Suddenly, someone snatched the wreath from her hands, startling her. Jessica twirled the wreath, examining it with a sneer. "What kind of nonsense is this flower crown?" she mocked. "A half-breed like you would find this suitable." Sarah called out to Jessica in fear, but Jessica ignored her, showing the crown to her servant, Spencer. "What do you think of this?" Jessica asked, her tone dripping with disdain. Spencer smiled and replied, "The words you spoke are true." Jessica tossed the crown to the ground and called Spencer's name. He understood immediately, swinging his whip to cut the flower crown into two pieces. Flower petals scattered through the air, sparkling in the sunlight as Spencer's blue whip lashed out. Sarah gasped in confusion and dismay. Jessica extended 2 fingers towards her, a bored expression on her face. "I'm incredibly bored," she declared. Let's have some fun. A gun appeared in Jessica's hand, which she pointed at Sarah. Smiling wickedly, she said, "It's time for shooting practice." Jessica fired a shot, and Sarah, frightened by the sound, closed her eyes. Belle quickly came to her aid, deflecting the bullet with his scabbard. "Why not let me join in your game, since you're already bored?" he suggested, his tone calm but firm. Sarah, her eyes wide with surprise, turned to Belle. He smiled reassuringly. "I was just looking for an opportunity to test my divine weapon." Jessica, displeased by the interruption, said, "No mongrels getting in the way of my fun." Sarah, scared by her word, called out to her brother. Belle, comforting her, said, "You must have been scared, don't worry, I am here now." Belle glared at Jessica. Spencer, insulting Belle, said, "Bastard, how dare he glare at Lady Jessica?" Belle asked, "Is this the way he talks to son of the Duke?" Spencer replied, "Why would I show respect to the children of a concubine?" Jessica, mocking Belle, said, "I know you luckily managed to defeat Zane. That idiot lost to a scabbard, but your luck won't work twice." Belle replied, "Why don't you check for yourself, if it's luck or something else?" Jessica called out to Spencer. "Deal with this garbage quickly," she ordered. Spencer waved his whip and smiled. "Understood," he replied. As his whip hit the grass, a piece of ice immediately formed at the impact site. Belle eyed his opponent with displeasure. Spencer Gray was a D-rank paladin whose divine weapon was an ice whip, making him much stronger than Zane, who was merely an E-rank. Belle frowned at Spencer. "I'll freeze your legs so you won't be able to escape," Spencer taunted. "Then your arms and torso, so you won't lift a finger." With a nasty grin, he stretched the whip. "And after that, I'll disfigure your face beyond recognition." Belle interrupted him. "You talk too much," he said, his voice growing more furious. "You'll pay for making Sarah cry." Spencer chuckled. "Asshole, you shouldn't look at me like that," he sneered. He swung his whip, shouting, "You'll soon turn into an icicle." The icy tip of the whip snaked towards Belle, but he dodged it just in time, recoiling to the side as the whip struck the ground. Jessica was shocked. As Spencer continued to swing the whip, Belle skillfully dodged each strike. For a D-rank, he's pretty good with his weapon, Belle thought, smiling to himself. Compared to the rigorous training he had undergone in his past life, this was child's play. Sarah watched in awe. "Incredible," she murmured, admiring Belle's movements. "It's like he's dancing." Spencer, growing increasingly angry, snapped irritably, "You're just running away." Belle's smile widened. "Is that so?" he said. "Then I won't dodge anymore." His voice was filled with resolve. All three opponents were taken aback by his words, their curiosity piqued as they waited to see what would happen next. Spencer leaned forward, shouting, "You're an idiot. Even dumber than I thought. If that's what you want, I'll freeze you dead." He sharply waved his hand, sending the icy tip of the whip towards Belle. But Belle merely spread his arms wide, indicating he was ready to take the blow. As the whip struck Belle's body repeatedly, he maintained a smile, his eyes locked on Spencer. Sarah, watching in horror, called out to him, but Belle remained still. The blows of the whip encased his legs in ice, and soon his body and hands were frozen as well. Spencer grinned triumphantly. "Now you're immobilized," he taunted. Just as he was about to say more, Belle interrupted him. "Is that all you can do?" Belle asked, his smile unwavering. "It's my turn now." Spencer's grin vanished, replaced by wariness. Belle glanced at his frozen hand and called upon Ragnarok. The snow-white sheath on his belt sparkled, and suddenly, the divine weapon appeared in his hand, shattering the ice around it. Spencer's eyes widened in disbelief. "A second divine weapon," he exclaimed. Belle pointed the gun at his other hand and released his mana. He fired, and with a loud ringing sound, the bullet pierced the ice, freeing him from his icy shackles. "I can move again," Belle declared. Jessica, watching from a distance, was stunned and worried. Why does he have two weapons? How can he use their attributes, she thought, her disbelief growing. Belle aimed the gun at Spencer. "It's time to pay for what you've done," he said, a flame flickering at the tip of the gun's muzzle. Spencer cursed, growing very nervous. In a desperate bid to protect himself, he struck the ground with his whip, causing a massive piece of ice to rise before him, serving as a shield. He laughed mockingly. "What now? Try to hit me through this thickness of ice." Belle replied calmly, "As easy as shelling peas." Immediately after these words, he fired the fiery bullet. It shot forward, piercing the thick ice barrier and heading straight for Spencer. Before Spencer could react, he saw a bright flash. The fiery bullet struck him in the stomach, and he screamed in agony, collapsing to the ground. The impact threw Spencer back, and he fell next to Jessica, who was visibly frightened. Her thoughts raced. He broke through the ice. Is he really stronger than a D rank? I am only an E rank. I have no chance. Belle walked toward her, and she froze in fear. "It's over," Belle declared. In a panic, Jessica stretched her hand forward, summoning her gun. She pointed the trembling weapon at him, her entire body shaking with fear. "Go away," she yelled. She pulled the trigger several times, firing bullets at Belle, but they all missed their mark. Unable to defend herself, Jessica backed away, pleading for him to leave her alone. Suddenly, she stumbled and fell to the ground, wincing in pain. Belle approached her, his presence imposing. Jessica looked up, her eyes filled with terror. He loomed over her, a dark figure with blue sparkling eyes. "Don't ever dare to approach Sarah again," he warned. Jessica's eyes widened with fear, tears welling up. Unable to bear his gaze, she scrambled to her feet and ran towards the estate, screaming in terror. Sarah, witnessing the scene, ran up to Belle and hugged him tightly, gratitude evident in her embrace. "Are you okay? You're not injured, are you?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. Belle, slightly surprised by her sudden hug, replied, "Everything's fine. The main thing is that you're safe." Sarah smiled up at him. "You're so strong," she said. Belle smiled back. "I'll become even stronger to protect you." Suddenly, Sarah remembered the flower crowns. She handed one to Belle, saying, "I made these wreaths. There isn't another one, but please take the one I made for myself." Belle knelt down, and Sarah placed the wreath on his head. "Thank you for always protecting me," she said softly. Belle felt the flower wreath on his head and thought, a gift from Sarah. He smiled widely, realizing that one day the whole nation might honor such a gift. However, he knew there were still problems ahead. Even the knights despised them for being the children of a concubine. Though he had defeated Jessica and Zane, it wouldn't change the fact that they would continue to bully Sarah. As her sibling, he resolved to assert his status in the house to protect her. He would show everyone that he was strong enough to defend his sister, no matter the challenges they faced. Time passed, and the Duke was training near the estate. He held his sword at the ready, his eyes closed in concentration. He heard the fluttering of tree leaves and suddenly swung his sword sharply, slicing the leaf into thin pieces. As he completed his swing, he noticed Belle standing behind him. "What do you need?" the Duke asked, his voice stern. Belle, with resolve, replied, "I want to ask your permission for something important." The Duke's eyes narrowed in curiosity. Belle knelt before him, looking up with unwavering confidence. "I seek permission to take the C-rank exam," he stated clearly. The Duke raised an eyebrow. "You want to take the exam?" he repeated. "Yes," Belle confirmed. "I wish to serve the king as a member of our family. In exchange for the royal family's recognition of our status, we are obliged to fulfill their tasks, protecting important individuals, destroying monsters, and more. The fastest way for me to increase my status in the family is to achieve difficult tasks, and to accept those tasks, I need a higher rank." The Duke looked at him with a cold gaze. "You want to serve? I see you are full of ambition," he said. "But it's too early. You need to become a full paladin before reaching C rank." Hearing this, Belle began to untie the knot of the bag he was carrying on his back. The Duke continued, "Right now, you are only F rank. You just received your weapon. If you want to increase your rank, you should start with the E rank exam." Belle finished untying the bag and took out a large fang, placing it on the ground before the Duke. With a confident smile, he asked, "Would this change your mind?" The Duke's eyes widened in surprise. "Fenrir's fang?" he asked suspiciously. "How did you get it?" Belle extended one hand forward, summoning a weapon. A hammer appeared next to him, sparkling with energy. He threw it over his shoulder and replied with a smile, "With difficulty, but I managed to defeat that mongrel." The Duke was taken aback, realizing what this meant. Can he use attributes, he thought. This means he received special features for his weapons and defeated Fenrir alone. Belle is clearly stronger than C rank. After a few moments of contemplation, the Duke looked at his son and said, "Very well. I will allow you to take the exam." Belle's face lit up with gratitude and determination. "Thank you, father," he said. The Duke nodded, his expression softening just a fraction. "Do not disappoint me," he warned. "I won't," Belle promised, feeling more determined than ever to prove his worth and protect his family. Time passed, and Belle finally arrived at the bustling square where all the exam candidates had gathered. As he approached, he overheard some of them talking. "Look at all these applicants," one of them sighed. "There are so many of us, and they say the C-rank exam is a kind of ceiling. There are casualties every year." Another replied, "I wonder how the exam will go this time." Belle walked past these groups, and their chatter quieted as they turned to look at him with surprised glances. One of the guys called out, "Is there a child here?" Ignoring the stares, Belle approached the table where a young woman was accepting applications. "Do they accept applications here?" he asked. The woman looked up, clearly taken aback by the sight of Belle. Confused, she asked, "Do you have an attendant with you?" Bell shook his head. "No, I want to take the exam." The woman's eyes widened in surprise. She slammed her palms on the table and exclaimed, "You'll have to come back later when you're older." Bell's expression hardened, a hint of irritation in his voice as he said, "Even if you treat me like a child, I'm also a paladin." Before she could respond, a red-haired guy in a raincoat appeared beside them. "Stop playing paladin, kid," he said dismissively. Bell turned to face the newcomer, feeling an uneasy sensation creep over him. The red-haired man continued, "Little children don't belong here. Get out of here." As Bell sized him up, the other candidates began to murmur among themselves. "Is that Lennox Bright?" one of them asked. "The strongest D-rank paladin? His divine weapon is the wind sword, right? They say it can strike 8 times with each swing. Incredible." Lennox overheard their discussion and smiled smugly. He turned back to Bell and said, "If you want to get a C rank, you need to be at least a little strong. Like me." Bell felt a surge of caution and wondered, is this guy the strongest at this rank? Lennox walked up to Bell, bending down to match his eye level. "Do you even have a divine weapon?" he asked, his tone dripping with condescension. Bell met his gaze steadily and showed him the avalanche sheath. "Of course, I have a weapon." Lennox stared at the scabbard for a moment before bursting into laughter. He laughed so hard he had to throw his head back, unable to contain his amusement. "What is this?" he exclaimed between laughs. "A sheath? You can't be serious." Despite the ridicule, Bell stood firm. The other examinees also began to laugh, one of them jeering, "Is there really such a useless divine weapon?" A girl standing next to him chimed in, "Thank God I wasn't born so worthless." The smile on Lennox's face vanished. He looked at Bell with an arrogant expression and said, "I don't mind if an ignorant child like you wants to die here." Twisting a lock of hair around his finger, Lennox smirked. "I don't like that your participation in this exam might put us on equal terms." He turned and walked toward the arena, waving his hand dismissively. "You should run back to your mommy." Ignoring the taunts, Bell approached the girl at the registration desk again. "Register me immediately," he demanded. She was still astonished. "Are you serious?" she asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "Yes," Bell confirmed. "I am." The girl explained, "To participate, you need to be a D-rank paladin or have a letter of recommendation from a B-rank paladin or higher." Bell handed her a letter. "With this letter, I can definitely participate. That's what the rules say." She unfolded the letter, thinking, who would recommend this child? But as she read it, her eyes widened in shock. "This is a letter from Duke Galleon Catastrophic. Is this boy really the son of a duke?" With that, Bell was registered for the exam and headed into the arena. There, a knight stood on a small platform. One of them stepped forward to explain the exam. "First, we will use the teleportation stone to go to the dungeon. You need to retrieve the life gem on the 5th floor within 5 hours. There are 3 of these stones in total, and only 3 people who complete the task will receive a C rank." One of the examinees asked, "Only 3 people?" Lennox, with a smug smile, declared, "I'll be one of them." The rest of the participants looked at him strangely but remained silent. Bell glanced at Lennox, then back at the knight. The knight asked, "Is everyone ready?" In response, all the examinees joyfully raised their weapons. "Then the exam begins," the knight announced. It was Bell's turn to teleport. He climbed onto the platform and extended his hand forward, touching the teleportation stone. The engraved mark on it glowed, and Bell was instantly teleported. He found himself in a completely different space, falling through the air. A second later, a bright flash illuminated the cave around him. Bell glanced around, rose to his feet, and quickly assessed his surroundings. It seemed they had been sent to different places on this floor. "Where should I go?" he thought, looking down the dimly lit corridor ahead of him. The dungeon was enormous, but Bell was confident that 5 hours would be enough to clear it if he didn't waste time. There were many monsters in the dungeon, and as a paladin, his mana would grow stronger with each monster he defeated. With this in mind, Bell drew his sword, preparing for battle. A determined smile crossed his face. "Time to kill them all," he murmured. Meanwhile, in another part of the dungeon, several paladins had formed a group and were battling a swarm of armed lizards blocking their path. The first lizard lunged at one of them, who managed to dodge just in time. The monster's red eyes sparkled in the twilight of the cave as it opened its mouth, revealing sharp teeth. The sight sent a shiver down the spines of the paladins, causing them to freeze in place. Suddenly, Lennox's voice rang out nearby. "Pathetic," he scoffed. With a single swing of his wind sword, he sliced the monster into several pieces. The other paladins looked on in awe. "He's amazing," one guy exclaimed, his face lighting up with admiration. A girl beside him added, "I'm ready to fall in love with him." Lennox, basking in their adulation, moved on to the rest of the monsters. He swung his sword again, dismembering another lizard with ease. Annoyed, he turned to the paladins and said, "I'm not like you." He continued down the corridor, and the group followed him. "It's a pity," one of the guys said, "but unfortunately, this is how it is." "Thanks to him, we were able to get through," the girl remarked. Lennox laughed. "Then look at me with envy," he said with a grin. "Weaklings should act like weaklings." At this rate, they soon reached a huge door at the end of the corridor. The team stopped, gazing up at the tall door. Lennox turned to them and declared, "This is the last room." While opening the door he said, "I hope I find something interesting inside." As soon as door opened they saw several types of monsters inside. And there were also a lot of D-rank monsters. One of the team members noticed an altar at the end of the room, atop which lay 3 blue shining stones. "Look, over there," he called out, warning the others. As the group turned their attention to the stones, a massive stone golem began to move toward them. Lennox, eager to prove himself, decided to attack first. "I'll smash it to pieces," he declared confidently. Swinging his wind sword, he unleashed several powerful wind blows, but they had no effect on the monster. The golem continued to advance, undeterred. "Is he made of diamond?" Lennox exclaimed in frustration. The stone golem swung its massive arm and struck Lennox in the face with all its strength, sending him flying back and rolling across the ground. Gasping for breath, Lennox looked up in disbelief. "My sword doesn't cut through," he shouted. The other paladins were equally shocked, unable to comprehend how this could happen. Monsters began to attack from all sides. "They're attacking us now," someone yelled. A guy swung his mace, landing a direct hit on a monster's head and splitting it in two. But as soon as he raised his weapon, the monster immediately regenerated. "What does this mean? Don't such blows work on them," he cried out in despair. Meanwhile, a girl was swinging a fiery sword, trying to reach a harpy perched on the ceiling. "I can't reach her with my sword," she shouted. Suddenly, the harpy flapped its wings, sending a powerful stream of air that extinguished her flames and knocked her off balance. Lennox, just getting to his feet, thought to himself, "Is this the last room of the exam for C rank?" He looked at the stone golem looming before him and realized that the monsters must have resistance to certain weapons. The stone golem approached again, raising its hand to strike. Lennox, realizing he couldn't injure it, closed his eyes, bracing for the worst. "They're going to kill us," he thought. But just in time, Bell arrived. With a powerful swing of his hammer, he smashed the stone golem into small fragments. The loud impact echoed through the room, and Lennox opened his eyes, astonished to see Bell standing before him. "Almost late," Bell said with a smile, placing his foot on the shattered head of the golem. "I got too carried away with hunting." Lennox exclaimed in astonishment, "You're that same boy." He continued to stare at Bell in surprise, but his attention was quickly diverted by a slime monster approaching from behind Bell. Blue sparks danced around Bell's hand as he drew his sword and rushed to attack. Seeing the new weapon in Bell's hand, Lennox gasped, "Did his weapon change?" Bell swung his sword, effortlessly slicing the slime monster in half. Just then, the harpy decided to attack, flapping her wings and sending sharp fragments toward him. Bell swiftly pulled out a gun, aiming it at the harpy. He pulled the trigger several times, each shot creating large holes in the harpy's body. The paladin stood aside, watching in awe. "Is he serious?" one of the guys asked. "Is his weapon not just a sword?" the girl exclaimed in surprise. Lennox continued to watch, bewildered by the number of weapons Bell wielded. "Where does he get so many weapons from?" he wondered aloud. Bell, now armed with both a sword and a pistol, moved toward the remaining monsters. "There's almost no time left," he said. "We need to finish this quickly." He began to circle the room, expertly handling the monsters with his sword while simultaneously firing bullets at them. Lennox watched in shock, realizing that Bell did not seem like a mere child. Soon, Bell had dispatched all the monsters, cutting off the upper part of the last one's body with a final swing. Bell then climbed the stairs leading to the altar, the other examinees following him in awe. At the top, he looked at the 3 sparkling spheres and asked, "Are these the life gems?" The rest of the examinees gathered around him, filled with admiration. "How did you defeat them all alone?" one of them asked. "How does he carry so many weapons?" another wondered. Bell didn't answer, he merely gave them a dissatisfied look. The paladins turned to Lennox, their irritation clear. "Compared to him, you acted so self-confident, but you lost." "You're just a weakling," one of them said. "It's true," another added. "It wasn't cool at all." Lennox remained silent, unable to respond to their words. The others suddenly remembered the spheres and exclaimed with excitement, "We're now C rank." Bell, however, had a different plan. He summoned his hammer and looked at the remaining spheres on the altar. With a sharp swing, he smashed the altar, shattering all the remaining spheres. The paladins were shocked by his actions. What did he do? Why did he break everything? They exclaimed in disbelief. Bel held up the single sphere he had taken earlier and said, "There's only one left here. If you want it, take it." He glared at the paladins, his voice filled with disdain. "You're scum, incapable of anything other than flattering the strong." Turning his gaze to Lennox, who stood hesitantly beside him, Bel continued, "And you're a scumbag who enjoys humiliating others. None of you are worthy to be called knights." Lennox and the others were stunned and shamed by his words. They all fell silent as Bel began to descend the stairs. Suddenly, Lennox spoke up. "I understand. I was a weakling, but I was so self-confident. I'm grateful you made me realize it," he admitted. Looking at Bel with a determined expression, he added, "I won't stop, though." Bel glanced at him, recognizing the honesty and ambition in Lennox's eyes. He hadn't expected this. With a confident stride, he walked towards the exit. "I understand. Then we'll meet again someday," he said. After leaving the dungeon, Bel officially received his C rank. He sat down on a stone fence, looking at his hand with a smile. "Thanks to the monsters, my magical power has become stronger," he mused. He looked up, thinking of the next challenge. Only Sarah remains, he thought. Meanwhile, in a grand mansion, Duke Catastrophic had gathered a council. One man spoke urgently, "I understand everything. The knightly organization Karma is plotting a royal coup." The Duke confirmed his words, saying, "They're approaching our kingdom with 3 B-rank knights at their head. Their destruction is the mission of the Catastrophe family." Another man, sitting next to him, added, "It looks like they've already defeated Duke Schrabe." "Is that Duke Schrabe?" another council member asked, his voice filled with concern. "They say they strengthened their weapons with the forbidden book of pentagram. That's why the B-rank knights have gathered here," one man said urgently. The Duke agreed, "We need to keep our eyes open. We will defeat them." The man glanced at the empty chair in front of him and asked, "Where is young Master Jean?" Suddenly, the door swung open, and someone threw a book of pentagram onto their table. A young man turned to his father and asked, "So this is what he was talking about?" All present turned their surprised glances toward the door. There stood a long-haired young man exuding a dark aura. With a smile, he declared, "I've recently destroyed this organization. I will be the next Duke." After some time, a maid came to Sarah's room, placing a tray of bread and water on the table. "This is your lunch," she said curtly. Sarah smiled awkwardly and thanked her, but the maid paid no attention and walked out, closing the door behind her. As soon as she left, the smile on Sarah's face faded, and she looked sadly at the bread in front of her. She lowered her gaze, lost in her thoughts. Suddenly, the door to her room opened, and Bel entered with a box in his hands. "I'm back," he said with a smile. Seeing him, Sarah's face lit up. She clapped her hands joyfully and called out his name. She jumped out of bed and ran to him, asking, "Where have you been? I was so worried." Bel apologized and explained, "I had some business to take care of. But I brought you something." He laid out the fried chicken, pie, and apples from the box. Sarah was overjoyed, clapping her hands. "Apple pie. Thank you, Bel." She invited him to eat together. As Bel watched her smile, he thought, "She's so cute. But there's no time to be moved." He glanced at the tray of simple food the maid had brought and thought, as usual, they brought her a plain lunch. Probably because the old servants don't like the concubine's children. Sarah began to eat the pie, tears of happiness in her eyes. Bel thought to himself, "I need to quickly start working to improve her life." Meanwhile, the meeting in the Duke's chamber continued. The Duke looked at his son and asked, "Did you defeat Karma alone?" Naming him Jean, he said that he had achieved a great feat. Jean, the eldest son of the Catastrophe family, smiled. Next to him stood his loyal servant, Laser. The men around the table smiled and praised him. "This is to be expected from the eldest son of the Duke of Gallion," one said. The man sitting next to him agreed, adding, "You're on another level." Jean took his seat and asked, "So, what is today's topic?" His father replied, "There's another mission from the king. This mission is to protect Princess Rika Shatagvalane. Lady Rika must travel safely. Our job is to assign her a knight to guard her and ensure her safe passage." A man at the table asked, "Are there not enough knights from the palace?" Laser responded, "If it weren't for Karma, there wouldn't be a need for additional security." The man said, "Then we must ensure her safety. I think the safest route will be through Mount Ricotta." Suddenly, there were footsteps in the corridor. Bel entered the meeting room and loudly said, "Wait." All eyes immediately turned to him, and silence reigned in the room. A man looked at him in surprise and asked, "Young Master Bel?" The Duke smiled slightly upon seeing him, but the smile quickly disappeared. It looks like the exam is already over, he remarked. Bell showed him the document confirming his achievement and announced, I have received rank C. The others were very surprised and exclaimed, at this age, rank C? The Duke asked, so what? What do you want? Bell replied, I have some advice about the route. A man asked in disbelief, you have advice? Bell said, there are no monsters on Mount Ricotta, but it's an excellent place for bandits to hide. If they travel along a road in the mountains, it will take 3 days to traverse. I think they should drive through the monster meadow. The man exclaimed displeasedly, a meadow of monsters? That's a nest of danger. Bell replied, that's not the case. Mostly dead chimera and dark spirits live in this meadow. These two types of monsters are mainly active at night. If they travel during the day, it will be safe, and they can reach their destination in just a day. After listening to Bell's proposal, a man at the table thoughtfully remarked that it was true. The Duke looked at his son and thought that Bell was well informed. When everyone else fell silent, Bell stepped forward and said, let me handle this mission. I will deliver the princess quickly and safely. The Duke looked at him thoughtfully and did not answer, but suddenly Jean called out to Bell. A dark aura immediately thickened around Jean, and he told Bell, with a sneer, mongrel, don't meddle in our business. From the dark aura emanating from him, the flower on the table immediately withered, and the others in the room grew nervous. Bell clenched his teeth, feeling the oppressive greatness that Jean exuded. He hadn't seen him for a long time, but the eldest son was different from everyone else. Bell clenched his hand into a fist, collected his thoughts, and then called forth Avalon. A sheath appeared in his hand, and he said resolutely, no matter who stands against me, I will still protect the princess. Jean looked at him with a terrifying gaze and asked with a smile, even if it's me against you? Bell replied emphatically, I will not change my mind. Laser, Jin's servant, suddenly warned Bell to be careful. Bell took it as an insult. He looked at Laser and thought that he was Jin's servant, a rank B paladin. Jean grinned, his red eyes sparkling, and said, interesting. He turned to his servant and said, check him. After the order, a weapon appeared in Laser's hands. Preparing for battle, Laser said he understood. He looked at Bell with irritation and thought, how dare he contradict Jean? Now he will show him his strength. Laser sharply rushed forward and disappeared from Bell's field of vision, as if vanishing into thin air. A second later, he reappeared, already very close. He raised his hand to strike. Bell became very worried when he saw him so close and cursed in his thoughts. Laser struck, but Bell managed to draw his sword in time and block the attack. Laser was surprised that the child blocked his attack, and Jean grinned. Bell was nervous and thought, I almost missed it. He's faster than I thought. I can't defeat him just yet. They were about to continue, but suddenly the Duke raised his voice and told them to stop. Bell froze in place, feeling the pressure from his father. After this, the Duke calmly said that he was entrusting this mission to Bell. Laser turned around in astonishment and asked, my lord, are you sure about this? The Duke replied that he thought Bell was capable of this mission since karma had already been eradicated. Laser retreated, and Bell put his weapon away. Bell said, thank you father, I won't disappoint you. If you like this video don't forget to subscribe for the next part. Thanks for watching.